in the next one, we let go of the actors, material objects, and we just say 2/5 is equivalent to 8/20, whether it's 2/5 or a bread or a beer or whatever. But note that in the two sentences at the bottom, the discourse is no longer about those two quantities. The discourse in the two sentences at the bottom is about ways of representing those quantities. Can you see the focus of the discourse has changed there? So we have the three different kinds of discourse. We have yellow discourse, which is about real material objects, events, etc. We have the blue, which is the bulk of mathematical discourse and scientific discourse, descriptions of relationships between conceptual objects. But then we have that pink one at the bottom, which is really a discourse about language, a discourse about representation. It's another one. There are people in the world that strongly suggest at the moment, and for a number of years already, that pink kind of discourse should become part of the discourses of primary school classrooms because it's empowering. Of course, it's not easy to make it happen. Let alone if teachers are not aware of I'm coming back to Professor Uyu. If teachers are not aware of these different kinds of discourse, if teachers are not aware of the fact that clause, amount of, is a different kind of language than the others, then they can hardly support learners to access these other kinds of discourses. The language, the ways of speaking, the discursive practices of mathematics and science are in many, many ways different than others. Cape Town and Mangaung are cities. Well, Mangaung, yeah, it's a city. I come from Free State, it's a city. Is Polokwane also a city? All of that makes sense. Okay. 2/5 and 8/20 are equivalent fractions. Now that's the same construction, the same kind of sentence than the one at the top. So, does that last question make sense? Is 5/8 also an equivalent fraction? I'm asking you, is it? The question does not make sense. Not at all, because that phrase, equivalent fractions, that kind of object, that expresses a relationship. It's not that 2/5 is equivalent or 8/20 is equivalent. That word equivalent there expresses a relationship. Yet the sentence constructions are the same. This is an example of the different ways of saying, the different ways of talking that are used in the hard scientific disciplines and in mathematics. We may claim, and I do, that to progress in mathematical learning, learners need to learn to use different genres of text. I don't believe it will happen by itself. Not even in the most bilingual, multilingual classrooms. It will not happen by itself. There needs to be concerted effort by teachers. First, awareness of these different kinds of text, different ways of expression, of the different ways in which concepts, which are words, are constructed in the science. It can possibly be helpful, I think it's critical that teachers be supported to be aware of the real language problem. People tend to think of language just as a means of communication. That is a very bad prison. Language is a means of, but so are pictures, as Darby just showed. But language is also a vehicle for thinking. It's a carrier of thinking. It's a carrier of concept. Not only as a way to encapsulate thoughts you may have in your mind, but language is also a mathematical method and a method in physics. Because it is by certain language constructions, as I've mentioned earlier, that certain mathematical concepts are formed. Here's a bit of homework for you for the next part of the lesson. Please do it quickly. How much bread do Ben and Tembi eat together? Well, I check the time, 10:38. So I use 19 minutes now. I'll have to rush through the rest. How much do they together eat? I mean, you can think of it as 4 of those big slices, because these bundles, yeah. Okay, 4 first. Okay, let's move on. The language of learning and teaching options. 4 options have been mentioned. English as a monolingual, home language, whatever that is as a monolingual. The one that is used in many schools, English and home languages, sort of doing code switching or translanguaging or using in parallel, and Katie going with the idea of multilingual. Now all these options are currently in use. The first one is used in private schools, some private schools. The second one is also used in many schools. They're all currently in use. My view is that we have to leave the choice of LOLT to the discretions of teachers and schools, not the governing bodies, but the teachers and the schools, to give them the space to do what they are most comfortable with in their particular context. So that we are bigger than we here. But we present a certain sector in society. We represent, I think, the innovative force in education. Okay? I think we should rather use our debating energies and our innovative energies not to debate now which of those 4 should we go for, because we have never reached consensus. We'll just go on debating. Let's leave that to the teachers who know best what is possible for them and what is best in their situation. Spend our energies on promotion of progressive development of mathematical language and the other STEM languages, irrespective of LOLT choice. Demanding of teachers that they change their LOLT practices and policing that implementation of that will not necessarily promote the kind of language used in the classroom. The kind of language used it's not a choice of language. It's whether we engage with development of the disciplinary languages, as Satsopi said. In any case, to change LOLT policy, that will require a sitting of Parliament, or quite a few, a white paper, a strong political will, a very robust educational management capacity, none of which are at our disposal in this country. Let's rather do what's possible. Possibly possible. No questions, I'm going to take 3 more minutes. Okay, Janssen? We can start doing that today, but it will require a lot of work. I've done a little bit of a linguistic analysis of the mathematical language of fractions, and we've only started much more. There's a lot of work needed relating to all our languages, linguistic analysis of mathematical language, language of physics, and so on. And then, of course, teachers need to be trained. They need to be made linguistically aware. Let me jump to something else. we can now climb into a bus and go to the nearest high school and go to the grade 10 or the grade 12 class and write that left part on the board to the 25 and the 8 and the 20, and they have to come in, and that's the answer the majority of them will give you.
Yes.
I've researched this everywhere in the country and people in the world. That's the common answer. Well, depending on what those things mean, it may actually be right, but let's skip that for the moment. Mathematically, it's complete rubbish. I've been a bit naughty in choosing the examples because if you simplify the 10, 25 thing, then you get the 2-5 thing again. Why do learners produce rubbish like this? I say one major reason is flawed classroom language. Because the majority of our teachers and learners call that thing on the left 2/5, that thing 8/20, instead of calling them what they are, 2/5 and 8/20. Look at this slide. There are 4 things there: squiggles, language, things, and thoughts. Okay, forget about this stuff at the bottom. There's squiggles on the left top. There's a bit of discourse at the right top. The things box is empty there because it's all about the squiggles. Now that kind of language produces the kind of thought displayed there, which supports it. Flawed language. How can it be dangerous to say 2/5? You can see most the 2/5. It is enormously dangerous. But if we say 2/5 and 8/20, a very different kind of thought is facilitated. 2/5, 8/20, the equivalence. You see, in many cases in mathematics, just the using of proper mathematical language is useful. What can classroom discourse be about? You see, it can't just be about the squiggles, talking just about the squiggles and nothing else. And then this kind of thing like 2/5 and 8/20 happens. I call that squiggle discourse. Okay? Not connected to anything, and it induces rubbish thoughts. But here's a different kind of discourse. You see, that language, 2/5 and 8/20, that is language that possibly relate the squiggles to things and to real mathematical thoughts. And now I've lost a wonderful slide I've made. I wonder how that happened, and I'm so sorry. I had the 2 breads there at the bottom left. Okay. Katie mentioned this idea of having textbooks in different languages. The Department of Education, the DBE, owns the complete set of mathematics textbooks that was recently written from grade 4 to grade 9. No publishers needed, nobody will make money out of it. It's a completely communist project. I've been very largely associated with it, so I am a practicing communist. Okay? It's 6 books like this. Also for technology, there are books like this. Also for science and technology. The science was produced by Siavulu. It was produced by authors from outside, and you see there the large number of contributors, all DBE curriculum advisors. This was a joint project between the Department of Basic Education, the Sasol Foundation, and the Okokona Institute. Given the political climate, the fact that we'll have an election in 2090, I believe that the political will to put copies of these in the hands of all learners in the country next year is very strong. And that's what we don't. That's what we don't. So this is it's good timing. These books were written in a specific way. I'm almost done. You see those shaded parts at the top there? Our learners cannot read. This is from grade 4. Grade 4 learners cannot read text like that. The policy here was to include the text that the teacher may use in the classroom in the learner books, and to point out in that way. It's not necessary to produce translations of these whole books. The critical parts to be translated are those parts, so they're already selected. These books were written from the kind of perspective on mathematical language that I gave in the earlier part. So a lot of work on the role of language in forming mathematical language has already gone. This was a 4-year project. And terms like equivalent fractions are introduced by, first by experience, measurement there, and then that was the end. Except that, thank you.